Welcome to the Pongcast, brought to you by the Pong-A-Thon. We are a movement that exists solely to see the issue of modern-day slavery end. Right now around the world, there are estimated to be more than 40 million slaves, and we believe this is not okay. We fight modern-day slavery by creating awareness of the issue, but primarily through the fundraising of monies that goes to support 7 incredible organisations that tackle the issue of modern-day slavery in different ways. We raise funds through the marathon table tennis events, or what we like to call Pong-A-Thons, where communities all across Australia and the US will engage and play table tennis together, some for 2 hours, some for 24 hours, to raise money to fight modern day slavery. Since 2011, we've raised nearly $2.7 million, and we're very proud of the contribution that we have made in this global fight. In our episodes together, we will explore what's happening in the movement, as well as have incredible interviews and conversations with our partner organisations where they discuss the impact that is happening on the ground. We hope you enjoy it. And welcome to the second episode ever of the Pongcast. We have the illustrious General Manager of the Pong here, Matt. Matt, how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, David. How are you?
I'm good. How did you find the first filming of the Pongcast that we released about a month ago?
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, okay.
Why the hesitancy? I think I know, but maybe give some context for our viewers.
Because for days leading up to it, you were sending me messages and emails and smoke signals about, and don't say that, Matt, and you can't go there, and you mustn't be disrespectful and irrelevant and irreverent. And I was like, well, this is nothing like our Facebook Lives where we just thrived on irreverence and irrelevance. So being on best behaviour, David, it was tough, but I hope I did a good job. But David, we must have done a good job because
I think you did do a good job. Yeah, that's right.
we had over 2,000 views on Facebook alone. So goodness only knows how many on the other platforms. Now,
Correct.
we were used to getting 400 to 500 hits on our, dare I say, epic Facebook Lives, and I appreciate that half of those hits were me because I found them funny going back, and I still do. I had a look at the Christmas one last week, David. It's absolutely noble. But wow, what a number! Over 2,000.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that, Matt. I think it's worth saying thank you for everyone that has watched. As I described in my little preface, this is really about being the one-stop shop, so to speak, of hearing and understanding all things Pong related to the movement, to the impact. So yeah, we really appreciate you dropping by. So Matt, maybe as a starting point, tell us what's new in the world of Pong in terms of communities registered and dollars raised and all the things worthy of talking about.
All the things worthy of talking about. Well, I'll try and condense it. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I was supposed to be in Adelaide for a one-day trip.
Yes.
For a few meetings that didn't come to pass because of COVID. And then you and I were supposed to be in Perth for 4 days, 4 nights, and we weren't allowed into Perth either. No. But the exciting thing about not being in Perth was that we were still able via Zoom to do a couple of the meetings that we had lined up. Yeah. And we had most fantastic meetings with a group of Bunbury Pongers in the southwest, and then a group of Pongers from Nedlands Uniting Church. So right. we had an early start on the Saturday morning and a late night on the Saturday night, but boy, it was worth it just to catch up with some of these communities.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. The other great news, David, is that in this year where we're hoping to get our income back up to $500,000 of funds raised, we're nearly at $20,000 already, which amazing. 2/3 of the way through June is great. So the exact number right now is $18,737, and we now have 13 events registered, one of which is already played. That's our good friends in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, in the United States. But the 13 events
are fantastic.
Across 4 Australian states. Yep. So what a good start there. Can I just read out to you?
It'd be great to highlight, who these communities are. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have Belgrave Heights Christian School in Victoria, St Mary MacKillop College in Victoria. Going over to Adelaide, Seeds Church and their XS Youth.
Awesome.
Youth. I like that. That's good fun words. The Grange Pong is a school in Victoria. Barrel Pong is Barrel Baptist Church in New South Wales. Erina Baptist Church in the central coast of New South Wales. St Mark's Hillary's Junior School Pong-A-Thon in WA.
It's in WA, yep.
Boys Brigade Pong. I might come back to that one, but that's really exciting. St Raphael's School in Cowra. Golden Grove Pong's Church in Adelaide. Rostrevor Baptist Church, another church in Adelaide, and the Emmanuel Christian Community School, Girraween in West Australia. And of those venues, David, there's some long-standing Pong veterans. There's some brand new events, and I think excitingly, there's several events there who were not able to Pong in 2020 because of COVID, who are coming back this year, and that's just great to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I should also point out, David, that at this stage, the dates of these events, they range from early July to November.
Okay.
And I know one or two communities have contacted us and said, your Pong United weekend, your big Pong United weekend on the 10th and 11th of September, if we can't Pong on that weekend, can we still Pong at another time? And the answer is categorically 110% yes. We would love you to Pong on the Pong United weekend so that you can join in the fun of that, and we can film you and you can see all the other events Ponging simultaneously. But the most important thing, in big bold letters, underlined in italics, Pong when you can, when suits your community best. That is the most important.
That's the most important. 100% agree. No, that's great, Matt. And tell us about you said the Boys Brigade Pong. You're going to come back to that.
Yeah. So Alex is one of our two interns for this year, and Alex and his friend and our friend Danielle, they're doing a great job in their interning roles with us. And Alex has been working pretty hard at getting some brand new Pong plants happening. He's talked for a couple of years about trying to get something happening with Boys Brigade, of which he's a part.
Yeah.
And it's now happening. So September the 18th, not quite sure across how many Boys Brigades, I guess that's what they are, communities, they'll be Ponging, but he said I think he set them a goal of $10,000, which is
amazing,
pretty audacious for a first time event.
Yeah, absolutely.
So welcome everybody from Boys Brigade Pong. We really look forward to having you on board on September the 18th.
No, that's it's awesome to hear all the communities that have already registered this early out. And I guess it's worth an encouragement, Matt. You know, if you're a community that has maybe run in the past and wants to get back on the Pong wagon, please register. Get on board for this year's campaign. It's going to be a lot of fun. As Matt said, the most important thing is that you Pong. If you can Pong on our Pong United, which is our 24-hour live stream event on the 10th and 11th of September, then we'd love for you to be a part of that. But as Matt said, the most important thing is for you to Pong. So yeah, get registered. Registrations are live on our website, pingpongathon.com. We would love to see your community there.
Absolutely. David, I'm hoping that we'll be back up to 100 venues this year.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we will, maybe we won't quite make it, but that's the figure that I've got in my mind.
Yeah, no, it would be amazing. As you probably know, we raised about $345,000 last year, and given COVID and all the uncertainty of last year was amazing. The years before that, it was around the $500,000 mark. So as Matt, as you said, we absolutely want to get back to that point. So yeah, encourage you, if your event's already registered, if your community was listed there, get registered as a participant. If you're someone that wants to lead a Pong in your community, then we really encourage you to host one. Awesome. So I guess, Matt, there are a few things. Well, we probably should have said at the start, actually, we've got an awesome interview coming up with the CEO of Lyft International, which is one of our incredible partner organizations. And I did this interview 3-4 days ago, Matt, and yeah, it's fantastic. So we look forward to jumping into that. But before we head to the interview, there's just a few impact updates from our partners. And there's actually a number of things that have happened in the last month since we updated you. But for the sake of time, I want to restrict it just to two that are really quite powerful in terms of the impact that was achieved. And these are projects that we as a Pong community directly support. So, this impact is really your impact. Whether you've donated, whether you played, whether you've run an event, this is because of you. So one of the stories comes out of Chennai, which is South India. There was a rescue operation done where 13 people, 5 of those being children, were rescued. And these were effectively 3 families that got rescued. So Matt, I guess a bit of context of what happened here. They owned one of the fathers of one of the families owned a charcoal business. And a bigger organization started buying charcoal from this family business. And the owner of this bigger charcoal business said, "Hey, do you want to start working for me?" In the first instance, he did 2 things. The first thing he did was he gave loans to be able to upgrade this gentleman's equipment. And then what he did was he said, "Well, I could pay you more if you just work for me directly and you moved close to where my factory was." It was quite a fair way from where they actually were located. And so they decided to move close to the factory for better pay. Once they got there, they were forced to basically hit these quotas that were just completely unreasonable. And the kids had to work, everyone had to work. They tried to get extra jobs at like local brick kilns to be able to, I guess, subsidize to make more money. And some of them tried to escape as well and go back home. And yeah, this guy basically chased them down, hunted them down, found them, and basically told them that, "Hey, you owe me this money from the loans at the start of when he, for the use of the upgrading of equipment." And the amount that was owed was, I worked it out, it was 5 times more than all 3 families earn in a year combined. So, there's no way that they could ever repay this debt in terms of the amount of money that they were making. And so basically this started a cycle of bonded labor because there was no way that they were going to pay these amounts back. This gentleman was very controlling. He wouldn't let them go to weddings, to funerals, religious ceremonies. He would be very controlling in the sense that he would only let one person go to the market to get supplies. So, none of them could escape together. It was always just one person. One of the women actually got pregnant. No hospital care, no nothing. After the baby was born, 3 days later, she had to start working again. So pretty horrific. And this went on, Matt, for 3 years. 3 years, these 3 families were basically in bonded labor. And thankfully, some survivors, that was a partner organization, one of the organizations we work with, was able to interact just by chance with some of the family members of this group. And one thing led to another. They were able to organize an operation to get these people out. And then the police were able to get the gentleman in custody. And it's quite new. It only happened the end of May. So proceedings are obviously ongoing. But yeah, 3 years this went on for. And some of the children were as young as 4 or 5, I believe, and they were made to work. So just horrific. But we can take joy in the knowledge that they are no longer in that place, and obviously they're going to go through a process of rehabilitation. So that's one story, Matt. The other story, really quickly, is out of the Philippines. 14 children were rescued in a sting operation. It was also late last month, I believe, as well, including a 3-month-old infant. And this was actually in collaboration with the AFP, so the Australian Federal Police, and it was linked with an arrest that happened from a pedophile here in Australia in his late 60s. So he was arrested, and then they basically did a forensic examination of all of his contacts and communication. And a result of that was these children being rescued. So it's sobering to think that we are, being Australian as a nation, some of the perpetrators. We create the demand for this market, which is quite disgusting. But again, 14 children, the trajectory of their lives now changed forever, which is, so good. Yeah, and no. So there's actually other stories that I could go into, Matt, but what we'll do is we'll release those on Facebook so you guys can see those impact snippets. That's just happened in the last month since we last did our update. So hopefully that encourages you.
I sure hope it does encourage people, David, because one of the things that we always say to people is, please never think that the day or the night that you pong and have some fun and raise a few dollars, that's it. Forget about it for another 12 months.
Yeah.
That money that you've raised, your efforts, that money's being used 365 days of the year, 24/7.
Yeah, it's great.
When we hear stories like the two you've just told us, in part, that's Pong dollars at work.
Yeah. No, that's right, Matt. That's absolutely right. It's not just a once-off. Doesn't just achieve something as a once-off. It works all the way through the year, and hopefully these podcasts will be evident of that, because it's our mission to constantly update you on all of the impact that's happening.
And then, David, whatever the number you just gave was, 13 or 14 lives that are now
14 in the Philippines, 13 in Chennai.
27 lives, 27 one lives.
Yeah.
And as we talked about a month ago, our campaign this year is based around the theme of one life. And what we've come to learn over the years, David, is that when the impact of Pong work impacts one life, that's great, but it's never one. It's never just one life.
Yeah, that's right.
It's always more far-reaching.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, it would be great. We probably wouldn't be able to do it, but it'd be great to drill down into one of these lives and just get their story and understand who they are and, what they're passionate about and what their favorite food is, to really humanize what's happened. But you're right, Matt. I think it's, even if the stories that are out loud was just one life each, it would absolutely be worth all the ponging that we've done.
Yeah, true.
So we will continue to update you on, I guess, the impact that the Pong enables really through our partner organizations, and hopefully that was encouraging to you. I think, Matt, now we will go to our interview, and I need to preface two things. Firstly, an important preface. Some of the things that Erik talks about is of sensitive nature. So if there are young ears listening, listening or viewer discretion is advised. And secondly, and this is me just being vulnerable, Matt, I was quite nervous with this in this interview. I think, Erik is someone that I really admire. He's the CEO of one of our incredible partner organizations. He's incredibly busy, and Lyft do amazing work, and you'll hear that. And so I think there's a few times where I'm just lost for words a little bit. So that's really just an advance apology. The other thing that I should say is that sometimes I'm not looking directly at the camera. That's because I'm looking down at Erik, or you for that matter, Matt, and my screen is quite large. So it looks like I'm distracted, but I'm actually looking at Erik. That's if you're watching this, if you're listening to the podcast, and just ignore me saying that. So we hope you enjoy this interview with the CEO of Lyft International. We have a very special guest here with us today, Erik from Lyft International. Erik is the CEO of Lyft. For those that maybe don't know, Lyft is one of our incredible partner organizations that works tirelessly in Thailand. And this is why we Pong, to really enable and sustain the work that Lyft do. So Erik, thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe a good place to start is to give a little bit of background of who you are, how long you've been at Lyft for, and then give us a snapshot of the work, who Lyft is and the work that Lyft does.
Sure. Well, again, thank you, David, for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be part of this Pongcast. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I've been living in Southeast Asia for about 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
Married with a lovely young lady since 2009. We have one daughter. Her name is Kiana. So we're a happy family here in this region. From a professional perspective, I have worked in both the profit and the non-profit sector. I kind of transitioned in the non-profit sector back in 2004, where I did some work in South America, supporting some local communities there. And then slowly I kind of made my way through Europe back towards Asia. And I landed in Asia in 2005, where I started working in some of the refugee camps along the Thai-Burma border.
Yeah, wow.
And again, that's where I met my wife, and I kind of stuck there. And through some work in Africa, and then over the past few years in Myanmar, I landed with Lyft about a year ago.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. And the work that you have done immediately prior to, what were you doing prior to joining Lyft?
So I was based in Myanmar, in Yangon.
Wow.
So I was overseeing five offices within Myanmar. So we had an office in Yangon. We had one in Karen State in Myanmar, one in Kachin State, and then we had two more in Rakhine State. So our work was really focusing on humanitarian support and some development aid, focusing on immediate emergency response, in particular in the conflict in Rakhine State.
Wow.
Then also looking at education, at child protection and other things.
Wow. Amazing. So for those that maybe aren't as aware of what the work that Lyft does, can you give us a brief synopsis of who you are and the work that you do?
Of course. Lyft started working about 10 years ago. So it's originally from New Zealand. Our former CEO, Justin, and his wife, Carolyn, and then a friend of theirs, which was an investigative police officer, they kind of came together with an idea where they saw the opportunity, in a way, to support the anti-human trafficking in Southeast Asia because of the experience that they had built up over the past years. And they decided to actually choose for Thailand. So they went to Thailand for one trip. And when they were there, they were able to support a few women that were trafficked. And that was kind of the start of, at that time, it was called Invader. Okay. So although the origin is from New Zealand, all the work has always been in Thailand. So we're based as an organization and working out of Thailand. So we're based in Chiang Mai. The initial work was really focused on what we would consider now search and rescue, where it was really going to these entertainment venues, massage parlors, really looking at the sexual exploitation of in particular young women in these venues. What has happened over the past years is that, of course, there's been some good successes in that work, but the downside of these successes was that the avenues of trafficking shifted away from some of these known venues. So our organization kind of evolved away from that as well, looking more at reinforcing the capacities of law enforcement and the judiciary system. So really working closely with them so that they were supported in their casework to find the offenders and identify the victims. But then we also kind of evolved beyond that, where it was not just about the intelligence and the investigative work. We also looked at then, of course, the legal side. But we also have a social worker team that really provides immediate support towards the victims once they're being removed from harm. And kind of are the first responders and the first contacts with regards to referring them towards other professionals that kind of help these victims and survivors in their journey towards recovery.
Yeah, wow. You've touched on a huge myriad of things that you guys do. Would it be possible to give us maybe a snapshot from like the end-to-end process that Lyft undertakes, from say the initial investigation all the way through to the aftercare with your social worker team?
Sure, David. I think that's a good question, actually. If you look at what we do, if you look at our casework, there are almost two options. One is where one of our partners, so it could be either the Royal Thai Police, it could be the Department of Special Investigations, it could be a prosecutor. They come to us and they ask specifically for certain support to us, which could be either from the start of the casework with regards to helping them build the case, or it could be a specific technical aspect of the casework that supports the whole casework. So for example, sometimes they come to us asking for us to do a forensic extraction of digital evidence.
Right.
So that's just one of the things that we can potentially do. And then we just respond to that. We support them in that sense, just kind of help them with regards to collecting evidence, with regards to doing surveillance, with building a case in court.
So I'm guessing like the time would be really varied. Like some would be really short, intensive times where you're doing this data collection. Other times it would be longer surveillance. Would that be a fair assumption?
That's a very fair assessment, because in particular, when the other option where we as an organization, we kind of lead the development of a case.
Right.
So we're working very closely with other organizations that we consider collection partners. So they kind of are our ears and eyes on the ground that provides us information of what's happening in some of the communities that we do not have direct access to. Now, once we hear that information, we actually deploy our investigators. So they then go assess whether it's based on facts, and try to collect evidence that we can then build into a case that we can then deliver towards the proper authorities, and they can take it forward.
Got it.
Now, once that kind of investigative component is being finalized, once the arrest is being done of the offenders, we usually move towards the prosecution part. The prosecutors that we have in our team, they are already actually involved in the pre-work of the case, because they need to inform our investigators with regards to what type of evidence would be necessary to ensure that in the end the proper prosecution can take place once the offender is being arrested. So our legal counsel, they work closely with both victims to help them kind of understand what the legal processes are, to reassure them, to gain their trust, to kind of guide them through the whole process, but also work with the prosecutors to kind of help them build the case, and at moments even act as a co-plaintiff. At the same time, we do have what we call an aftercare team, a team of social workers that immediately are involved with regards to the taking care of the victim as soon as that person is being removed from harm. They are assessing what type of needs they have, immediate needs or long-term needs, and they start reaching out to a network of partners that we have set up, just to see, okay, who can best provide these type of services towards these survivors. Whether it is Lyft, at moments we are best suited, but at other moments, other organizations are better equipped to provide that service. And then we just develop a long-term roadmap with regards to this recovery. And then our social workers maintain in contact with either these organizations or with the survivors themselves, just to see how things are going. Because at moments, if there's a quick emergency and there's a gap with regards to service provision, we do step in at moments just to fill that gap as well.
No, incredible. You talked about prosecution once the search and rescue or the victims are removed from harm. And then you talked about aftercare. Just a quick question on the prosecution. In Thailand, is it a difficult process? Like, are the cards almost stacked, are the odds stacked against you from the outset? Or are you finding that that it is a process that is becoming, as the awareness and the advocacy is built? Because from my understanding, the awareness of the issue and human trafficking as a crime is becoming, I guess, more and more in the limelight, and people are becoming more and more aware of it. Are you finding that it is quite difficult to prosecute, or is it really on a case-by-case basis?
I would say it's a bit of both. If you look at Thailand as a country, I think that the legal environment is quite well set up.
Okay.
still at moments it is not as it could be to kind of support the prosecution as we would like to see it happening. But I think the biggest challenge there is at moments also the practices. You know, if you look at, for example, how some of the judges are looking at certain evidence, how some of the law enforcement are you know, potentially turning a blind eye with regards to saying that, okay, it is actually not human trafficking that's happening in the region. So instead of you know, looking at a case from a human trafficking perspective, it might become a complete different scenario, which then of course reduces the awards and the convictions and the jail time. But on the other side, as you mentioned, with some of the advocacy that's happening, not just through Lyft, but all around within Thailand, some of the work that we're doing, and in particular the best practices that we're trying to instill on some of the partners that we're working with, we see positive change happening. You know, we see that more and more cases are being trialed in accordance with human trafficking. We do see that certain evidence is more and more being accepted. We see that you know, the corruption potentially that was happening in some ways, or certain non-mandatory practices that were happening, that they become less and less as well. You know, that regulatory offices are more committed with regards to making changes in policies that are conducive for you know, combating human trafficking. So yeah, we do see positive signs, but we're not fully there yet. But you know, that's why we're there, and that's why we'll keep on working.
No, absolutely. But would you say that the trend is heading in the right direction?
It definitely is.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
No, that's awesome. Erik, I'd love just to encourage the movement, and you know, the people are watching are those that have donated, those that have participated as part of the Pong movement. Could you give us an example of a case study, someone that has been removed from harm in the, you know, in the last little while, and maybe share their story of what happened, if there's a story that comes to mind?
Sure. I mean, if as an organization, we're always keen actually on sharing, you know, some of the atrocities that we see day by day. But it's difficult at moments because, of course, the fact of re-traumatization, re-victimization, safety of our staff. But I think one of the cases that really got to our team, you know, was something that happened last year.
Okay.
We were informed about a case in one of the eastern provinces of Thailand, through two of our partners, so the Department of Special Investigation and a local civil society organization that we work with. They contacted us about a case where a young girl had been systematically raped, and the act of raping was actually sold online by the offender. So our legal counsel immediately went over to that province to talk with the both partners, and to also meet with the victim and meet with the victim's family. Throughout the case, our social worker team also became involved. So what happened was that the offender had a shop opposite of the home where the girl and her family was living.
Wow.
And both her parents were always working, so she was very often home alone. And the offender got to know her because she at moments went over to buy goods at his shop for the family. And then one day he just decided to come to her home when nobody else was there, and she was just home alone, forced his way in, and then raped her at knife point. What was even worse was that you know, at the moment when it first started, the girl was 11 years old, and it continued to go on for 2 more years. You know, where, as I mentioned, it was systematically, sometimes just several times a week, he would just rape her, and as I mentioned, he would sell the videos online. Fortunately, through an observant teacher, the girl actually finally confessed. Parents had no idea. You know, for 2 years they were just sitting at home eating, not being aware of actually what happened. They, of course, got very shocked about these things. It was then reported towards the proper authorities. Then, based on the information, the man was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in Thailand is that during the arrest, you're not allowed to have bail, but afterwards you can actually get a bail. So we did file a motion for no bail because we were worried about the re-traumatization, because the offender, they're very
so close.
towards the victim and the family. Now, unfortunately, that motion was denied. So shortly after the whole investigation was kind of completed, he was given bail, and he was actually moved back towards his home. So that severely re-traumatized the victim and the family as well. So we decided to bring in our social workers. So they went over as well. We had a conversation with the local police to look at the potential for witness protection. Now, unfortunately, witness protection within Thailand is different in every single province. So in here, they were saying that there needs to be a physical abuse or threat towards the victim coming from the offender. Plus, if she would move into witness protection, she will be removed from her family and be sent towards a children's home. Now, together with the family and the victim, and then our legal counsel and our social workers, we decided that was not an option. So we, as Lyft, we have a project that we call the Lyft Life Fund. Mm-hmm. So it's a fund that we use as a bit of an emergency fund, where sometimes we use it as seed funding for victims, that they can be used with regards to starting their recovery, but also for moments like these where we can then provide some funding for different purposes. So this time we agreed with the family that we would look for a housing within the area, but away from the offender.
Of course, yeah.
So that they could actually live there. So we found some housing. So we provided funding for that, and then we provided some funding for some basic living expenses. And then one of our legal counsel and one of our social workers spent actually weeks in that area to just build trust, gain trust of the whole family, and kind of guide them through all these legal proceedings. What happened throughout the legal process is that the offender in the end died of an acute alcohol poisoning.
Wow.
But the legal proceedings are still going on. So we are still working very hard to ensure that the victim and her family get the justice that they do deserve, and that the victim is being put back on a journey of positive reintegration and a joyful life.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So that just to clarify, the compensation, I guess, that really should be awarded to this young girl, that is still ongoing in the courts as we speak.
That is still ongoing, but
right?
We're very positive with regards to that's being awarded.
Okay. Well, we look forward to, I guess, hearing progress on that as it develops, because, gosh, that's it's unfathomable to think of the trauma that this young girl has gone through. And the process of like how long with you and your partners, I guess, again, it's a case by case basis in terms of the support that she needs to be able to really enjoy a life that's full of hope and joy, rather than being stigmatized and having to deal with this trauma for the rest of her life.
Yeah, as you said, David, it's a case by case scenario. I mean, at moments we're able to close a case, a few months after we've opened it. Right. But there are cases. For example, we recently had a young lady, for example, that we are continuing to engage with 7 years after we first started engaging with her.
Yeah.
And she kind of still sees Lyft as a trustworthy partner. So in particular, our social workers. And we're still working with her to ensure that she does have the right tools and the right capacities to continue on her journey to recovery. So it's a case by case scenario.
Thanks for sharing, Erik. I mean, it's a horrific story, but the work, I just think, again, I mentioned in the last episode when we were speaking with Freedom Story, one of our other partners, she shared a story, and just thinking about the trajectory of this person's life had they not been involved. And I think of the same thing here. You know, if Lyft and your partners hadn't got involved, the trauma and the atrocity that would still be occurring day in, day out, week in, week out it's just unfathomable to think. So it really does, as sobering as it is, it makes the work that you guys do all the more worthwhile. Obviously, it's why you guys do what you do, but I guess for the Pong, it's hard sometimes to really connect how playing table tennis and raising money actually makes a difference, but clearly it does from hearing stories like that.
No, and we fully understand that and agree. And again, I mean, for us, it's always challenging to share all the different stories that we have, because we want people to to understand what's happening on the ground. You know, the atrocities that we see every single day. You know, but again, sometimes it's of such severity, or you know, that we feel like, okay, you know, one of the things that we really want to focus on more and more is not really focus on the atrocities, but really focus on that journey, you know, because, you know, as you mentioned, it's a journey that we are actually part of. You know, we do work with regards to removing them from harm, you know, and that removal and being part and seeing how traumatized some of these victims are at that moment is hard. But once we are, you know, continue to engaging with them 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, and see that some of these victims are having their families, you know, they're providing for their families, they're following education. Now, that's what really makes us feel that we're doing the right work.
Yeah, it's a celebration of that, really, isn't it? And I totally agree.
Exactly.
That's really where the comm should be, and celebrating the transformation, the turnaround, the ability to come from such a place of darkness and to live a life full of joy and hope. That's what it's all about. I love that. Well, Erik, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. If I could just to, I guess, wrap up our conversation. A lot of our movement is of faith, from churches and Christian communities, and I think one of the ways that they'd love to participate in supporting the work that Lyft does. Obviously, the fundraising, the advocacy is a huge part of what we do, but it would be great for our movement that are of faith to really be able to know how to best pray for Lyft International and the work that you do. So could you give me just a couple of dot points that first spring to mind that would be a great way for us to support you in prayer?
Of course, David, that's a wonderful question. You know, Lyft International is a faith-based organization itself as well. So I'm a devout Christian, so I pray a lot myself as well. One thing as a team and myself that we definitely always pray for is praying for the people that live in increased vulnerability right now, in particular looking at, you know, following the COVID-19 situation, but also all these victims or potential victims of human trafficking that are out there, but also the survivors that we work with day in, day out, you know, that they have a positive journey back towards reintegration and recovery. And then, you know, I would definitely love to ask your audience to pray for my team as well. You know, because I've mentioned before that, you know, they're always exposed to big atrocities, you know, and sometimes we forget the traumatization that it brings on people as well.
Yeah.
It's not an easy situation. So it would be nice if we could just ask your audience to pray for my team as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, that's really great to know and have the best, have the best way for us to be able to support you in prayer. Erik, thank you so much for being a part of our Pongcast today. I know you're very busy. You guys do incredible work. It pains me to pull you away from that for a little bit of time, but being able to hear the stories that you've shared, it really does make the work that we do, and it's, you know, it's just raising some money and creating some awareness, but it really makes it real. It makes it worthwhile. It gives us some insight into the impact, and hopefully partnering and being able to support you in the way that we do. It's playing our part in this global fight against human trafficking, modern day slavery.
Well, it's been my absolute pleasure to be part of your podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation, and we've highlighted the 10th and the 11th of September in our calendars already to kind of support you.
Yeah, awesome.
In the event that you guys are organizing, so we're very keen to be part of that whole event. And again, as well, I mean, we would like to thank yourself as an organization, but also the communities that are supporting you with regards to the support that you're providing, because without that support, it will be really hard for an organization like Lyft International to do the work that we're doing. So we definitely thank you for that as well.
I love it, Erik. You promote our own events. So Erik referenced Pong United, 10th, 11th of September. So that's when we're having most of our communities coming together, playing all at the same time. And yeah, we're looking forward for you. Maybe you could jump on the live stream. We could do an interview then. That'd be cool. But yeah, we're hoping for a great result. We're hoping to be able to send a lot of money your way to continue the awesome work that you guys do.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to it. And again, thanks again for the conversation.
Cool. Thanks, Erik. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed that, Matt. I'm sure you saw a few times there, especially when he was sharing the story, the color kind of just drained from my face. I kind of didn't really know how to respond to it. Yeah, quite extraordinary.
Yeah, excuse my silence. That's the first time that I've seen that just now. Golly, mate, where do you start? What an amazing human being to start with, as I'm sure all of his team members at Lyft are. Yeah, I'm sure that the emotions that we're collectively feeling now, David, are being felt by everybody tuning into the Pongcast. So please forgive us if we're a bit on the quiet and sober side. Perhaps you are too.
Again, I think, Matt, it really demonstrates the power of the transformation of one life. Just harking back to our theme for this year. That was a story of one life. And we played a role in that. We absolutely did. Even though that happened last year, all the funds raised from the 2019 campaign enabled that. So it's and I think what he had to say about celebrating the journey, I think that was really powerful, because I was kind of lost in the horror of it all. But really him saying, what we want to focus on is the power of the transformation, of them being able to come from such a place to be able to, start businesses, to start a new career, to get back into education, whatever it might be. That's really what it's about. And that's what we need to celebrate. So I really liked what he said there.
I actually wrote it down, what he said at that point, David, and he said that there's something about a joy of focusing on the ongoing journey, continuing to engage with the individual, long after the crimes have been perpetrated.
Yeah.
And David, it also something that Erik said quite early on. He talked about having to think at times about the safety of your own staff.
Yes.
Golly. I'm pretty sure you and I have never had to think about our own safety while going about Pong business. We just smile and have a great time and hopefully bring people along for the ride with us.
You're so right though, Matt. I mean, that was a stunning statement, and it really, I guess, highlights the real grim reality of human trafficking. The other side of this is pure evil, really. And
yeah, these aren't games, are they?
No, they're not. So look, hopefully, especially at the end, when for those that listen that are of faith, hopefully him sharing about how to partner in prayer is helpful for you, that you can support and partner in the Pong in that way. And hopefully that inspires you to, go all out in your Pong efforts this year. There is a huge opportunity to have an immense impact in 2021 through the Pong. So yeah, we're excited to see what this campaign produces by way of impact, by way of results, by way of communities engaging. And we're just starting to creep in. As Matt said, there's a couple of events registered coming up soon. So we're just starting to ramp up into campaign season, which is very exciting.
I have nothing to add, my friend.
No worries. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Matt, for co-hosting with me once again.
You're welcome.
We will see you on the next Pongcast episode. Bye for now.
Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this month's Pongcast episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. To learn more about the Pong and to join this fight against modern day slavery, please visit our website, Pong-A-Thon.com. We're also very active on Facebook, so please follow us there, facebook.com/Pong-A-Thon. And we look forward to joining you in the next Pongcast episode.